It's late September, and just after a brutal fortnight, a board meeting is called. Shareholders are addressed, and before today's story properly hits the public, Ubisoft leadership breaks the news that everything is changing and that because of that, they've had to slash their financial targets. Year to date, their stock is down 60%. Month over month, it's down 47%, and just today, it dropped 20%. What once traded at €94 is now trading for €9.2. This is dire. You're no doubt here because of Outlaws and Shadows, and I will get there. There's a lot to talk about, but there's an entire angle driving this that you're probably not aware of because usually it's presented in a dry and boring way. So let me fix that. An internal shareholder revolt led by an activist investor essentially boiled down to this. They said that CEO Yves Guillemot and the Tencent deal, which basically shored up their control of the company, in the view of the activist investor, is unfair to minority shareholders. And to get around this problem, they want to crack open the company using EU law. They want more control, they want major changes, and in their vision, they want to leverage what they learnt as an investor of Activision Blizzard, have a long-term vision and make sweeping changes. It is that pressure that leads us here. Ubisoft, you see, is a family business. Defending control has been a massive theme over the last decade, and that means that CEO Yves Guillemot, now more than probably any time in his professional life, is feeling the heat, and that is why we see this, the mother of all break glass in case of emergency changes, things that basically are giving players what they want and removing a bunch of bad business model things. And here, the job of me and my team is to break down the business and the strategy of how games are made so that whenever you see the insane, depressing bollocks of the news, you're actually left understanding why. And to help that mission and to get more content, I would really appreciate it if you click the subscribe and like button. And my reason's really simple. It takes you a few seconds, it's free, and what it does is send the YouTube algorithm a good signal, and that helps us get the word out. We've had an incredible month so far. That's because of your support, and let's just say things are going in the direction where I will be able to invest in making the show better and invest more in the team, which is damn exciting. Okay, let's talk about the change. Ubisoft are upending their entire business model beyond the bit where, they're still going to be selling you video games. But paid for advanced access is dead. Season passes are dead. And the whole thing of Steam releases just happening a year after, well, that's also dead. And that's amazing. The whole thing that they wanted to do on the PC platform was to put you in Uplay, to have a Uplay subscription button right beside the most expensive edition of whatever game it is so that you get Uplay Premium. And of course, they didn't want the Steam fee. They tried that, and it's obviously hurt them, so now their games are going to be on Steam. And for consumers, this is unambiguously a good thing. Season passes are often misused, advanced access basically sucks, and we all hate it. Those going is good, and that's because they're psychologically forceful revenue optimization squeezes that are just applied to all players. Seeing a AAA incumbent go against that is good, and it's good even if you never plan to buy a Ubisoft game. The reason is this is now somewhere where the big companies can compete with each other by actually being less of a dick. But of course, this happening in the first place can only mean one thing, that internally things were absolutely on fire and that this is sheer desperation. Things began to look strange when Assassin's Creed Shadows pulled out of Tokyo Game Show. That was a major marketing beat. Of course, it's a game set in Japan and it's Tokyo Game Show. It's also one that Microsoft are going to be having a presentation at, so eyes would be on it. Rumors of a delay immediately began to swirl, and very soon they were confirmed, and we got statements, we got reasons. And the big one is Star Wars Outlaws. Ubisoft confirmed that analyst assessments of the game underperformed are true. It sold softly. They say despite solid reviews. That's how they frame it, but solid does not scream buy me now. Outstanding does, and the reviews were not outstanding. Look at the reviews and you see that polish is a problem. You see that minor details matter. Every in-depth review mentions them, and as an example, my colleague who's editing this video, a lifelong Star Wars fan, the literal target of this game, almost quit at the very beginning, or close to it, because of how a stealth segment was framed, tuned, and was inconsistent with the rest of the game. It led to an experience that was that frustrating. Now, a patch has since fixed that, but the point is, it launched the way that it did. How many players bounced off? Clearly quite a few. And this lesson obviously impacted Shadows. I think it's very clear they expected something similar to happen. Now, they say the game is feature complete, but that based on Outlaws, the game needs more polish. Vibes-wise, that makes sense. This is a game that has had multiple different dramas swirling around it since its very unveiling. I also would wonder if pre-orders have over time been weak. Now, back in May, Tom Henderson, who runs Insider Gaming and has got loads of sources in the industry, his people told him, multiple of them, that pre-orders of the game were strong. But that was in May. I think since then, things may have changed, and armed with the lesson and the numbers of Outlaws, they're learning lessons. What's happening now is that all pre-orders of the game are cancelled and refunded, so I would love to see what their payment processing fee is for that one. The reason why, though, is clear. It's because the product itself has changed. There is no season pass, there is no advanced access. And those are the two things that defined the modern Ubisoft special, which was leveraging a powerful psychological hook that is called the Goldilocks effect. What you do is you have your base edition just be what it is. You then have a very, very expensive maxed out edition with some, knickknacks like cosmetics, but in the middle, you've got the thing that you actually want people to buy. So their use of the Goldilocks effect was increasing their sale price, $69.99 for the base version to $109.99 for the version with the season pass, and of course that premium early access. The whole point is that you think you're getting a great deal because you're getting all of those extra perks, but obviously it isn't really. It's a great deal for Ubisoft. That's because 6 months after release, the base game will be cheaper and you can just buy DLC if you want to. The Gold Edition never was a good deal, it was just leveraging the Goldilocks effect very well. Conventional logic then says that in doing this, they are sacrificing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And so if they're doing that, we know it must be desperation. Now make no mistake, average sale price is still the goal, but they're going about it a different way. This is the new strategy. Anyone who pre-orders Shadows will get the first expansion for free, and that includes Steam, because yes, it is launching on Steam day one. Pre-orders, of course, are amazing. They lock in that launch pricing, and hey, you get a free expansion. That is actually a good incentive. That's all to get people back, but to get them back at day one pricing. And for Ubisoft, that narrative shift with their audience matters. Take Valhalla. It's been a backbone of their business. It has actually done massive numbers, even though it's not the most respected game, at least based on its launch. What it's had is loads and loads and loads of DLC. It's a single-player live service, basically. The thing is, though, you can't sell DLCs to people who aren't there, hence this situation with Shadows. On the topic of Outlaws then, weak sales and soft reception basically make it hard to justify future content. I mean, if it's underperformed, why spend loads of money making DLC for it? But of course, if you make that financially prudent short-term decision, what you do is ensure that Outlaws never turns into a long-term business, like Valhalla did. So, what they're doing now to try and solve this situation is, quote, fully mobilizing to address player feedback and quality of life. They're going to do loads of patches, and then on November 21st, they're going to launch the first expansion and launch the game on Steam. And hey, it's even got Lando Calrissian. I mean, very cool. Me personally, I clapped when I saw him in Disney Star Wars Episode 9 Rise of the Skywalker. Yeah, maybe it'll work. But for some tone, let's hear things from the horse's mouth. Here's a quote from Yves Guillemot, CEO. Our second quarter performance fell short of our expectations, prompting us to address this swiftly and firmly with an even greater focus on a player-centric gameplay-first approach and an unwavering commitment to the long-term value of our brands. Yeah, that's absolutely regular CEO talk, yes, but there's actually a deeper reason. Because if you've read the shareholder letter that I talked about last week, you'll actually see crossover. And don't worry, that gives us a hell of a note to finish today's video on. Strategically then, what we can anticipate is a spiritual second launch of Outlaws. Basically, big wave of news, big patch announcements, deep discounts, and probably a bundle with the expansion so they can hit the Christmas game playing audience pretty hard. And really, it's all narrative. If you lose the narrative, you've got a negative multiplier on every single thing that you do. That means your investment is just nerfed. And that's why, even though this is dire and this is a crisis for Ubisoft, for us it's actually good news. It shows that you cannot disregard your narrative, that you cannot do these sorts of things time and time and time again without it actually incurring a cost and taking a toll. And for just a taste of how quickly they got bludgeoned by reality, as I record this video, going to the Ubisoft site, you still see the November release date for this game. You still see the old Gold Edition. They actually haven't even had enough time to change their own website. That's how quick this has all went down. So with that said, let's talk about the future, their plan, and then the skullduggery and the massive opportunity that's going to make some people a shitload of money. Okay, let's talk about Ubisoft's fate. The strategy is pretty damn clear. Increase average sale price by juicing up day one sales, but doing that in a way that is more player friendly and sets their franchises up for good day one and long-term success. That's the plan. Now let's talk about that shareholder revolt. You see, the core point of the activist investor who's leading that is to do an Activision stick to the big franchises only. Now, you can't do that if you kill those franchises. Take Ghost Recon Breakpoint. If you're Ubisoft right now, it sure would be lovely to be fresh off the back of Ghost Recon Wildlands talking about the next Ghost Recon that's going to continue to bring that franchise back. But no, Breakpoint killed it. Far Cry ran dry. You just couldn't milk it anymore. Assassin's Creed is their king franchise, and that's why this happens with Shadows, because if you kill Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft is finished. And I'm going to put the games aside. Strategic, right? They need safe products. That means eliminating risks. So doing advanced access from a position of weakness is risky. Not launching on the world's largest gaming platform in day one is risky. So for all that they may think that the village building in Shadows or the dual protagonists with different gameplay, that's innovating the game, or that Outlaw's saying, hey, do you want to play our game without yellow paint and map icons? As much as they might think, oh, that's making our games better, well, the hated commercial trends that they've went to, those have done damage to the product, meaning the games themselves often don't matter. Now, a source at Ubisoft leaked an internal memo to Insider Gaming, and in that memo, CEO Yves Guillemot said this: "In today's ultra-competitive market, players expect extraordinary experiences and ultra-polished games on day one." That's not Outlaws. We need to continue to improve when it comes to fine-tuning our games and delivering outstanding gameplay. This is what will enable Ubisoft to again create the best games in the industry. And looking at that, I think it's hard to say that Yves is wrong. It's also insane to think that none of this was obvious years and years and years ago. What it is a tacit admission of their place in today's market, which is actually a weak market. If you're a weak competitor in a weak market, you're going to die. UK game sales are down 30%. EU down 1.6%, which was a surprising difference to me. Either they're perfect data and the same methodology and the UK really is as screwed as it seems to be, and the Germans just will never stop playing RPGs, grand strategies, and sim games, or it's different methodologies that both point downwards. Even when we go to the US, a single-digit decline is actually expected for the first half of 2024. And that's shocking because of Helldivers 2 and EA College Football, which massively prop those numbers up. So my point is, everyone is going down by default. It's a vicious market, so product strategy that is designed to make the most money in a time of plenty will obviously be the first to crumble. And for the activist investors eyeing up the company, well, they know this doesn't work when your expensive 7.5 out of 10s are fighting everybody else's games, while your critical hits are, your small-scale side-scrollers. So let me explain how investors are going to and plan to make a shitload of money from this. Number one, Ubisoft is cheap. It's €9. So if you can buy it cheap and sell it high, you're going to make money. How do you get that stock price up then? Well, one way to do it is to have massive successes and all of that. But you can't guarantee a success. What you can do is sort of 80-20 principle where your revenue comes from. Safer products, better long-term vision, and most importantly, eliminate costs. Fire the NFT people. Fire the metaverse. You can get rid of that stupid goofy shit. You can then divest studios, sell them to other people, though unfortunately for them there's not an Embracer group ready to gobble up everything in Europe anymore. And that means you can shut down some studios, you can reduce headcounts in other studios, you can take the decision making that led to, hey, we've got Tom Clancy, so let's do an extraction shooter late, a COD competitor late, a battle royale late, and the myriad other strange projects that just died. You could stop doing those. Stop pissing away your money. They will look at how Elon handled Twitter. They will inhale the smelling salts of business. They will look lovingly at their picture of Paul Graham. They will touch it and they will whisper to themselves, it is time to engage founder mode. And if you know what that is, you know. They'll ask themselves, can we run Assassin's Creed, Division, Siege, and a select other few things while reducing headcount by 40%? Now, big picture, there's two ways to make money here. Number one, the stock goes up, you bought it cheap, you can sell it high, happy. But number two is almost certainly what they want to do, in my opinion, and that is to take Ubisoft private, to gain more control. So what they would do, right, is they would plan changes. They would, establish a thesis. You would then fund taking the company private with private equity. So what that would involve is basically a number per share and buying out the public shareholders. In doing that, there would be way more control over the company. It wouldn't have to deal with quarterly bullshit, and all that tasty private equity could perhaps be put to some work. And hey, maybe you can make it a leveraged buyout so that Ubisoft itself gets saddled with loads of debt and the private equity people get to be extra super mega happy. Now, the thing is, the activist investor basically says there have been opportunities to get loads and loads of private equity money, and they've basically said no. Now, the reason there is Eves has done a lot to ensure control over the company. It's a whole big long story, but it's why him and the deal with Tencent give them loads of control over the company. And yes, to the point where this investor wants to use EU law designed to protect minority shareholders to crack open the iron grip that Yves Guillemot and Tencent have got for themselves over the company. And what's telling is the investor who's leading this charge started increasing their position in Ubisoft recently at all-time lows. They are not doing that because they want to burn money. They're doing that because they think that Ubisoft, the financial asset, can be turned around. And to understand that full situation, watch this video next, because in light of today's news, it hits so much harder.